As humans, we have call it a standard way of experiencing our consciousness. If you have a mind and a body, you know what I'm talking about. On the regular, your prefrontal cortex thinking part of the brain is going. The default mode network is chattering away, giving a constant narrative to your experience. You experience the world around you and yourself in it. You are conscious of yourself, if not a little self-conscious. You are the protagonist in the constant movie of your mind. An hour feels like an hour. 5 minutes feels like 5 minutes. It pauses while you sleep and picks up again when you wake up. You know, consciousness. Do I need to convince you, or do you get what I'm referring to? What it's like to be alive and conscious? I could have used different sentences and different examples, but as someone that knows what it's like to be conscious, that's probably enough for you to recognize that I'm talking about our shared experience. There's another way of experiencing consciousness. If you have a mind and body, it's accessible to you, but that's not to say that everyone has experienced it. So I'll try to describe it. It's often referred to as an alternative state of consciousness. It's the thing that meditators and yogis are after. In this state, the sense of self melts away. There's a part of the brain called the orientation association areas that give you a sense of where your body ends and space and things begin. And that area actually turns off during this state. This disorients perception of space, not just the body, but all things, objects, may lose their distinct separateness as one perceives the universe as a unified whole, a quality of oneness underlying and throughout everything. It is an out-of-body, out-of-self experience. There's also a change in how time is perceived. Hours can feel like moments. Moments can feel like hours. Across time, across cultures, across individuals' experiences, there are some consistencies about the quality of the state of consciousness. For one, gaining visceral understanding of the true nature of the universe, its unifying force, is a kind of knowing. The same way that you know what it's like to be conscious as a human, you know what it's like to be conscious from this different vantage. You might think that sounds like a trick of the mind or an illusion created by the brain. But those that have experienced it would say the self-constrained, self-aware ego mind feels more like the illusion, and this feels more real, where the psyche is attuned to the cosmos. And knowing this perception has the sensory markings of remembrance. When consciousness is not wrapped around emotional ego mind thinking, perception comes from a more objective, detached vantage. The mind feels perfectly clear. Concepts can become available. Like you suddenly have inspired knowledge of things and how things work, epiphanies that enter into your sphere that you previously did not have access to. You find deeply profound meaning. Paradoxes are resolved. There's an ineffability to it. Like as soon as you try to use words to describe it, the words are off the mark. Words point to differences. We use words to split apart this from that, and hot from cold, and you from me, to construct the very world of objects our brains predict and experience. So the unifying nature that cannot be split apart is lost as soon as words are applied. If I lost you there, it's totally okay. I'm not describing the state of consciousness so that you can have a complete understanding in lieu of having your own firsthand experience. If you're inclined to push back against the validity of what I'm saying here, then I'd suggest trying out some activities to validate it yourself. But seek your own firsthand experience first. You must viscerally know yourself, and then you can try your own words when my words fall short. If you have experienced it, then I'm sure my words are falling short. You might prefer different words or examples, but as someone that knows this state of consciousness, it's probably enough for you to recognize when someone is talking about your shared experience. Game recognize game. Also, I think it's a little weird to be completely dismissive of it just because you haven't experienced it. There's another alternative state of consciousness called runner's high. It has specific qualities about a person's orientation to self and time, and has shared qualities across individuals that experience it. As someone with a mind and body, it is hypothetically accessible to me as well, but I have not and will not experience runner's high. I just don't like running enough to get to the point where it could happen. It takes some practice, but that doesn't mean it's not a real thing. And I hear it's worth it. The same way that self-transcendence is worth practicing at, because people come away from it feeling transformed, feelings of joy and peace and reverence and awe, uplift and love. To know the universe through the consciousness beyond one's own, its beauty and grandeur, its mystical splendor, power, agape love, is a self-validating experience, worthwhile in its own right, not as a means to something else. If you've been there, you too probably have a love of this knowing, this wisdom. You know, the word philosophy actually comes from the Greek roots, philo, meaning love, and sophos, or wisdom. Pythagoras coined the term philosophy as a word to signify the love and pursuit of wisdom, which helps the soul bring itself into attunement with the cosmos. His love is not for pursuit of facts or infallible logic. It is the love of wisdom that dawns in silence. One philosopher, Henri Bergson, who died in 1941, said the problem is philosophy cannot function by means of a mute immersion in reality. Instead, it must base itself within language, which will always fall short. The game is to give words to that which is beyond words, to sit in meditation or contemplation, and then articulate the intuited understanding that comes through wordlessly. That's what philosophy is. That's the game, or at least it was for some. Eastern philosophy was pretty damn clear about that. But for some weird reason, it was like kept a secret in Western philosophy. And no surprise, a bunch of people missed the memo. They wanted to play too, but they didn't know that that was the game. Instead, they thought it was about outthinking and outwording their predecessors. Who can make the most rational, infallible claims about metaphysics, the one and the many, epistemology, linguistics, ethics, power, the relationships between individuals and our coalescence into a oneness, even as systems and societies, or how to live a good life? Funny, it seems all of the subtopics within philosophy happen to relate back to the qualities of self-transcendent experience. But the academic field of philosophy no longer reflects that as the starting point. So now there are two games. One game of writing philosophy is to first have a particular kind of experience of consciousness, and then you can write about it. The second game is to think about what someone else wrote and improve upon their reasoning with better logic, better theorems, and better scientific rigor. For me, the game of reading philosophy has become trying to figure out who were the first group and the ones in the second group. I said game recognized game, but it can be pretty tricky, and I'm no expert. But demiurge, aperion, unmanifest, absolute, unmoved mover, I get it. Primordial substance of air or water? You obviously don't mean nitrogen and carbon or H2O. I'm picking up what you're laying down. Spinoza? He got it. Callicles' conception of might makes right? Didn't get it. One guy explains a resolution of paradox, and the other critiques it as a failure of rational coherence. You missed the point. St. Augustine goes from the exterior to the interior, from the interior to the superior. He's doing it. Craig Foster, the guy from My Octopus Teacher, he's better at it than the philosophy teacher that says she doesn't believe in metaphysics. Then how can you instruct your class to gain firsthand understanding of the metaphysical? But that's the fun of it, is trying to recognize the ones that got it from the ones that don't, and trying to learn from what they said to gain deeper understanding and deeper experience for ourselves. But also, who freaking cares? Why care about any of it? Who gives a crap about philosophy? The second game is the domain of academic philosophy. If that's your kink, then more power to you. I can see how it's stimulating, like Sudoku, but I think the further we academically pursue things like Logical pluralism versus semantic or syntactic foundations of logic, normativity of logic, foundations of mathematical techniques for approaching logic, the less logical and accessible and relevant philosophy becomes for the rest of us. But the rest of us need good philosophy. Academia doesn't help us to live a good life. It doesn't give a source of comfort when we learn our child is ill. It doesn't soothe a weary heart in the throes of grief. It doesn't help us make moral decisions when someone looks us in the eye and asks us to choose between two bad outcomes. Evaluating coherence doesn't bring peace when the world is in disarray. But that is what philosophy is for. There is wisdom and comfort and solace and encouragement between those pages. Some of those pages. But actually doing it, knowing to go within yourself, to attune to the cosmos and come away transformed, that is the true pursuit of philosophy. And that cannot be found in any book. It is a practice of your own body, of your own mind. May the study of their words point you the way, and may your way take you to the interior and beyond words so that you too may have a love for the wisdom that dawns.